everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And welcome to the third and final video in my TMNT series. So watch along as I paint up everyone's favorite rat-chasing robots, the Mousers. So here you can see all three Mousers. Now funny enough, they were never meant to be featured in their own video. The two in the back were originally part of Rocksteady's base, but I could never get them to play well together. They always just kind of felt tacked on. Plus it made his base huge, which I didn't want. I wanted him and Bebop's base to be the same size, so I decided to just make them freestanding as their own figures. That way they can be placed in and around other characters as I add them. So for the majority of this video, we're going to focus on the Bebop Mouser, since he requires the most love. So I'll stop rambling and jump into the build. Let's get started. To start off, I want to block in the body and legs with Vallejo metal color exhaust manifold. Okay, so I've got my base color laid down and I've sealed it with a clear coat, and now it's time to come back and do some paint chipping, or do a paint chipping effect on this guy. Now there's a few different ways to go about achieving this look. One is to just paint them on by hand. If you don't want to do that, you can use something like a liquid mask to achieve the same look, and it's similar in painting them on. You would just paint the liquid mask on with a brush, or use a sponge, let it dry, apply your top coat, and then come back and remove the masked areas with either a brush or your fingertip. But for this video, I want to use what's called heavy chipping fluid. And this is very similar to the old school method of using hairspray. And basically what you do is you, like I said, you lay down your base coat, seal it real good, and then you apply a thin coat of the heavy chipping fluid with an airbrush. You don't want to brush it on with just a normal brush. You really need to use an airbrush to apply this. Let it dry for 30 minutes to an hour. Come back with your top coat, apply that. Again, let that dry for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And then what you do is you come back with some warm water and a brush, an old ratty brush if you have one, and then just start wetting the model in the areas that you want to remove the paint. And it activates the chipping fluid underneath, softens the top coat, and then you start removing those paints. And it creates a very convincing chipping effect. I really, really like the end result. So that's the method we're going to use for this video. So give me a few minutes and I'll be right back. First, I want to apply a coat of the chipping fluid. Once it's had a chance to dry, I coat the entire model in Mecha Air's Pure White. Now for the fun part, actually chipping the paint. So for this to work properly, you need a cup of clean water. Preferably warm if you can, but it's not required. It just seems to make the chipping a bit easier when the water's warm. So basically all you do at this point is just apply water to the areas you want to chip. Let it soak in for a few seconds so it softens the top coat, and start scrubbing away the paint to create a very convincing chip effect. It's that easy. So I'm going to finish up the body and legs, and we can move on. All right, so we're done with the paint chipping. I've sealed it with a clear coat, and then I've let it dry for about 24 hours and stuff. And yeah, like I said, it's a really cool process, and it's a pretty effective way to chip your paint, and it's super easy to do. As long as you have an airbrush, it's really easy to lay down the fluid and the paint, and then just come back and scrub it with a wet brush. And depending on how much damage you want to do, depends on how crazy you get with it. So anyway, so now it's time to focus on the finishing details for this guy. So once again, I'm going to hop off camera, get everything set up, and then I'll come back and we'll keep moving forward. For the trim around the neck and hips, as well as the rivets, I used Model Air's steel. Next, I painted the neck pure black, followed by painting the hip gear a simple brass, applied 2 coats of a gray wash to the neck, and finished by painting the eyelids a dark red. To make this part a little easier, I decided to apply the wash within sitting on base. And for that, I used Mecha Air light gray wash, as well as Mecha Air's black wash for the hip and legs. The last thing I want to do before calling him done is apply some dirt and grime to his underside. So for this, I used the same method as I used for Bebop's pants, only this time I used model color leather brown and black, then down to a wash consistency. All right, so I think it's safe to say we can call this Mouser done. And overall, really happy with how he turned out. It was a fun process, not too crazy. The paint chipping can be a little tedious, but as long as you're just letting your coats dry in between, you'll be fine. And the results look amazing. I'm really happy with the chipping effect. And then after that, it was just painting in the small details and then doing some washes here and there, the splatter on the bottom, and I think he looks fantastic. So now that this guy is done, it's time to move on to the other 2. And again, very similar process, not to this degree, but there will be a little bit of paint chipping, probably some washes and stuff just to weather them a little bit. And then after that, we'll come back and do one final shot of everybody, Bebop, Rocksteady, all the Mousers, which I'm really excited about. And then I can call this TMNT project done. So rather than bore you with the rinse and repeat of the first part of this video, let's just skip ahead to the finished product. As you can tell, it's just a more simplified paint job. I wanted these guys to have a more natural wear and tear feel as opposed to the complete battle damaged look of the Bebop Mouser. Now having said that, it's time to move on to the mouths. So I want to use the same chroming technique for the saw blades that I used for Bebop's knives. So you know the drill, I'm going to hop off camera real quick, get everything set up, then I'll come back and we'll paint some saw blades. First I want to start with a dust coat before applying a wet coat of gloss black. Then it's applying thin coats of the chrome until I get the desired effect. Then I'll seal everything up with several coats of aqua gloss. The last thing I want to do before moving on to the throat is paint the mouth with exhaust manifold, then apply a light gray wash. So one of the last things I want to do before gluing the tops of the heads on is to come in and paint the throat areas black. Now, I'm not going to use just a regular black paint. I actually want to use this stuff right here, which is called Musu or Muso black. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. and it's advertised as one of the blackest paints in the world, and they're not wrong. It's a really deep black paint. It's a really cool effect, and I've really enjoyed using this on projects and stuff. So basically what it does is it absorbs like 99% of light. So when you paint something, it almost makes it look like a void or like a black hole or something like that. It's, like I said, it's a really cool effect and stuff. So basically I'm going to use it to try and create the illusion that the throats are much deeper than what I've modeled into the figures and stuff. So I'm going to hop off camera real quick, get my airbrush set up, and come back and we will paint the throats. And I think I'm actually going to paint some the inside of the heads as well, just to mask the post that connects to the back side of the head here. And then we can glue the tops of the heads on and finally move on to the bases. Now this stuff sprays great right out of the jar. However, I am using a brush with a larger needle. I haven't tried it in my detail airbrush yet, but I imagine thinning it with a little water and it should spray just fine. Alright, so the throats are finished up, and as you can see, the paint does a really nice job of making them feel deeper than they actually are. It's kind of crazy how it works, but I love it, and I'm always looking for an excuse to use this paint. So with the mousers finished up, let's move on to the bases. I want to start off by blocking in the dirt with Model Colors Leather Brown. Now for the asphalt, I'm using Model Air Dark Panzer Gray. Rather than use my favorite wash, Textured Rust, I kept it simple and just went with a straight black wash. Next up, I dry brushed Model Color Desert Sand over the dirt and a medium gray over the asphalt. Finally, I painted the underside pure black and applied my channel logo water slide decal. So there you have it. The mousers are finally finished, and man, I couldn't be happier with how they turned out. There were a lot of steps for such a simple design, but in the end, I really feel like it was worth it. And real quick, just so I don't forget, here's a shot with them with Bebop and Rocksteady. So I know I said this was the last video in my TMNT series, but that's not entirely true. Since there was such an overwhelmingly positive response to Bebop and Rocksteady, I've decided to add a couple more characters to the lineup. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you know which two characters I'm making, and I'm super excited for both. But after they're done, I have to take a break from Ninja Turtles. They've taken up more than 2 years of my life, and I'm ready to move on to other projects. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram for more behind the scenes stuff. And until next time, take care everyone.